Right, so I think I had a little misunderstanding yesterday of what Samir wants me to go over, but we're gonna make it happen today. I wanted to go over some tips about how to present and how to introduce insurance first. I'll have I'll have Thomas then pull up a slide for us to go over. But I love the presentation. The presentation is something that's duplicatable. I know a lot of us can just sit in front of a client. We can, draw some nice pictures, say some good words, smile a little bit, and they can write us a check, right? But that's not something that's duplicatable. We can't get somebody with no background in finance or business come in here and do the exact same thing. So the thing I love about the presentation is anybody really can come in, they can hear it 3, 5, 10 times and be able to do the exact same thing and get the exact same results. So first I want to go over some tips, right? Because there are some tips on how to present. And some of these tips here are going to be very psychological tips here. So the first thing is to always build a connection with the client first, right? There's this book that Samir recommended. It's called Cues. And I was listening to a podcast where the author of that book was talking about how to find me toos, right? So when you're talking to somebody, sometimes you have a conversation and you know how sometimes you go, oh, me too, right? And immediately there's a connection. So while you're sitting down with clients, you want to get that connection. You want to find those me toos before you even start presenting. Because she explained it, it's almost like passing a string from you to the other person. The more strings you pass to each other, the more me toos you have, the stronger that connection becomes. Now you guys are like friends, right? And friends do business with friends. And then you want to build yes momentum. A lot of great things with the presentation is we ask a lot of questions that get the clients to say yes. So the more small yeses they say, the more easier it is for them to say the big yes. And then nod your head slowly for agreement. I think this, as human beings, we all naturally do this. When someone is talking, we're into the conversation, we nod, right? And they feel seen, they want to talk more. So you can use this in the presentation for if you want them to say yes, right? So if you're talking to somebody and you're asking them a question and you want them to say yes, just nod while you're asking the question. It's really weird for somebody to be like, no, as you're nodding yes, right? They're gonna say yes. All right, and then ask questions. You want to ask a lot of questions and you want to listen to the client's answer because the presentation is supposed to be a conversation. It shouldn't just be you talking the entire time. The slides are made as a guide to lead to the close, so just go through the slides and always address concerns. This is a huge thing. When I first got started, I was really scared for objections, right? And when the client looked like they were concerned about something, it's almost like I would talk faster and I would want it to get over with. So whatever they were thinking about, they're gonna forget about it, right? But I found you always have to address their concerns. Because if they're concerned, that's all they're gonna be thinking about. They're not thinking about what you're saying anymore. So you're just wasting your time talking. So always address that. So if you see their their eyebrows are frowning together, they're leaning back, their body language is now disinterested, they're making weird sounds like, huh, their tone of voice, now it's different as well. Those are the times you want to address that. This is something that actually happened with an appointment I went on with Ron last week, where the husband was there was a point where we were talking about whole life, and his eyebrows were he was frowning, he kind of leaned back a little bit, and at that moment, I had to address it. I had to, talk to him and be like, hey, it seems like, you are a little concerned about something we went over. If you have any questions, is there anything you want me to address for you? And first he's like, no, we're good to go. But his facial expression still said that he was confused. So I said, are you sure? I don't mind answering any questions. And he was confused because he thought, he was like, I don't understand the difference between term and whole life, because he thought whole life is gonna be the same cost as term, right? So it was good that I addressed it, because if I didn't, I would go all the way to the close and he would be like, no, I want a whole life, right? So he ended up becoming a client, but you always gotta address that. And then you want to set the tone for the meeting. I know that, like Jen, for example, she has a lot of energy, right? And you just want to be around Jen because she has a lot of energy. But I'm sure that when she goes on appointments, she's not, she doesn't come into the house and she's like, hey, everyone! She does. Right? You want to meet the client kind of, okay, wrong example.
Down who's never like in person.
Yeah, you want to meet the client kind of where they're at, all right? Meet them where they're at and then set the tone, right? If they're a little timid, meet them, be timid, meet them where they're at, but then slowly and slowly increase it to how you want the meeting to go. So you're not just shocking them, right? And then you want to set the expectations earlier. At the beginning of the presentations, we set the expectations. There's going to be 3 things that are going to happen. We're either going to get referrals, you're going to become a client, or you're going to become a partner and get licensed with us. So set those expectations early, because nothing is worse than when you're sitting through a presentation and you don't know where this is leading, right? You don't know why you're sitting through a 45-minute presentation. You want the client to understand why are we having this conversation, and you want to keep it simple. So this is really where we introduce life insurance in the presentation, is at the after the compound interest slide. There we go. So, the compound interest slide, I always tell my clients this is my all-time favorite slide, because the compound interest slides introduces investing to them, and it really feeds into their greed aspect, right? So they see that $84,000 can become $1 million, and in their mind, now they're perking up, right? Now they're sitting up, now they're listening, and now you have their attention. So now this is the best time where you talk about life insurance, because after you got their interest, now you need to talk about their need, which is what the disappearing man slide does. That's where we introduce life insurance. We really talk about, yeah, you might want all this, but you need life insurance. So one line that I use, that's my transition line between the compound interest slide towards the life insurance slide, is, as you notice, you don't become a millionaire overnight. So while we build your wealth, we want to protect your wealth, right? And now we have to paint a picture. The disappearing man, that's all it does. It paints a picture for the client. And eventually, after you paint the picture, you have to have the client imagine themselves in the picture. So in the picture, what you see, which I guess Thomas put up for me here, is you see a husband and a wife. They're making $3,500 a month. You want me to go over this, Samir? This whole slide, like role play the way I do it? Okay, so let's say, right, Mr. Client, there's a husband and wife. They're both making $3,500 a month. Their bills come out to $7,000 a month. Now, Sushil, what do you notice about the money they're making and the money they're spending?
They have no savings.
Yeah, they have no savings. They're living paycheck to paycheck. And looking at these bills together, do you see anything unique about these bills? Or are they just everyday, ordinary bills?
Everyday, ordinary bills.
Yeah. So, Sushil, in your opinion, what could be the worst thing that can happen to this family financially?
Lose a job, maybe.
Lose a job, yeah, because what happens if they lose their job?
They lose their income.
Yeah, they lose their income. Now that's horrible, right? But I do give people the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they'll go ahead, figure it out, right? Find another job, pick up some odd jobs, maybe get licensed with us, make some money here. But what's even worse than losing that income temporarily?
Someone gets sick or passes away, maybe.
Yeah, someone gets sick or passes away. Exactly. If God forbid somebody passes away prematurely with no life insurance, not enough life insurance, or the wrong type of life insurance, now this is complete financial devastation. Because Sushil, only $3,500 is coming in now. But do you think the bills are magically going to be cut in half?
No.
No. So if this happens, what's the family going to lose?
The house, the cars, everything.
Yeah, everything. And that's kind of like a nice way of saying they might be homeless, right? Maybe they have to go move into their sister's home across the country, bring the kids with them. Kids have to move schools. Maybe they'll lose their car. She might even have to pick up multiple jobs, right? 2 or 3 jobs to keep up with the standard of living, keep up with the bills. Childcare might even have to go up as well, right? So this is why I said it's complete financial devastation. Now, Sushil, can you see in this scenario why having life insurance is so important?
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is where we find the need, right? Now, there's a few examples I go over, but I really now tie it back to the client. Because now this is all theory. This is just a sad story we're kind of going over. It's like watching a movie. But you want to bring that back to the client. Thomas, if we can go back to the other slide. And how we bring it back to the client is we say, Sushil, now this might be a silly question, right? But if God forbid something were to happen to you, would you want your family's financial situation to be better, the same, or worse?
Better.
Yeah,
just.
Alright, so better, of course. So now, Sushil, if something were to happen to you, let's say today, would you have everything in place right now where they would be better financially? No. So just with those two questions, they're putting themselves in that picture, right? Now they're realizing, oh, would my family be better? Like now they're imagining, oh, my wife is gonna have to move. You know, she is gonna have to downgrade her home. She is gonna have to pick up another job. So this is where you really find the need. Especially if somebody has never thought about life insurance before, this slide is a really great way to introduce life insurance to them. Thomas, next slide, please. I don't know why we got a new click here. All right, and then we want to go over the quadrant. Right, the quadrant really, when I think of the quadrant, I think of this quote, which is an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Right, I used to be like, the quadrant is so long, I don't want to go over the quadrant, but if you don't go over the quadrant, it is going to bite you later on. So the quadrant really explains the different types of life insurance policies there are out there. And I found that group life, you always want to go over group life, especially where we live here, because people love their job, people love their group life. So we always want to go over how risky relying on group life is. Now, if they're self-employed as a nail tech, like I was, right? there's no such thing as group life insurance, right? You're just kind of, there's no insurance anywhere, right? So you're not going to go into like spend 5-10 minutes on group life if they've been self-employed for 5-10 years, right? You can touch on it a little bit, and I always do touch on it just in case they do get a job. But if they have a corporate job or they have a high-paying job, I go into a lot of details about how group life works. I'll show examples, right? I'll show stories. I'll show the video because I want the client to see, I want them to feel, I want them to hear how bad group life is so that they can understand. I also go over the cash value policies. This goes the same way as group life. I'll touch on it. If they don't have cash value, they've never heard of cash value, I don't go into too much detail, right? There's no reason for me to go over the banks, or no reason for me to go over the fridges, no reason for me to show examples of policies if they don't have a cash value policy. Because all that does for the client now is it makes them so confused, right? But I will touch on it. I'll give a summary of how it works so then they know if you ever come across this, don't ever buy it. Or if you know a friend or family that might have life insurance already, 9 out of the 10 times they have the wrong type. Right? So I do want to share it with them, but I don't go into too much details if they don't have it. Now, if they do have cash value, I'll pull all the guns out. We'll show policies, we'll watch videos, we'll go over it all. Right? And then term. Now, I actually do this part when I'm quoting, is I go over the benefits of Primerica. So I go over why we're the best. How fast we pay out our claims. Why we're ranked #1, some of the benefits that we have, terminal illness rider, waiver of premium. And the reason I go over this is because it prevents them from shopping around. I don't think within the past few years I've had a client want to shop around. I remember when I first got started though, after I left, they're like, oh, I found a quote online, it's $10 a month for $1 million, right? And I just don't get that anymore because if you provide the value for the client when you're sitting down with them, they know they're getting the best product out there. They're not gonna go shop around. Even if they see something that's $2 cheaper, they know that what you have is so much better. And then also having you as an agent representing them is so much better. So definitely go over why we're the best term out there. And then if they don't have insurance, you always wanna go over the insurance slides, the no insurance slide. That's where literally the questions will pop on the slide. You just gotta ask the questions and they'll say yes, yes, yes. And then before you know it, you're submitting an application. And that's actually something Jen is gonna go over. She's gonna go over how to go over the no insurance slide, how to ask those questions, then how to quote the client, and then how to then close. Give it up to Jen.